Hello everyone, this is CodeWithSrini. Welcome back to yet another Angular 6 tutorial. In this video, we will be looking at one of the basic building blocks of Angular. There are four main building blocks of Angular and they are components, templates, directives, and services. Today we are going to look into components, and there are basically few steps, maybe 2 or 3 steps to follow in order to use components in your Angular app. First, you need to create a component, and next register it in a module. Finally, add an element in your HTML for that component to display a patch of your component. Okay, so in our first Angular app, make sure you get your project running. So mine is running, and then it's displaying our project in the browser. It's blank because there's nothing there. To give it a shot, we'll just say app component. Right now it will show up the app component. So okay, everything's fine, perfect. Now what we will do is we'll go ahead and create a component in our VS Code. Let's imagine I want to build a component to display a list of books. So the way I can name it is by giving it as books.components.ts. So my new component will have a name called books.components.ts. So this is the convention we follow to build an application. For example, if your component has a name called book list or book submit, you should name it like book-list.ts .component.ts, or same way for the book submit. So let's just clear that up. Now this is just a plain TS file. Now what we're going to do is we will create a class, a plain TS TypeScript class. So class of books component. Right now, one thing is, this is just a plain TS TypeScript class. We need to convert them into a component. So to do that, there is a decorator in Angular which will convert a component. To do that, we need to first import our component class from the Angular core at Angular core. So now we already imported it. So next thing is we need to decorate this class with a component decorator function. Before that, we need to let the Angular know that this class can be used. So we need to give it as export class books component. So that way we will tell the Angular that this is a component that can be used or shared. Another thing is, now go ahead and create a decorator function, component. Right, so the decorator function accepts an argument, which is an object. In that object, it accepts many properties, 3 properties. The one is the selector, and we will call it as books. Now this is just a CSS selector. So for example, if you're going to have a element, if you're going to add an element for this particular component, let's just say div of class with books. Now your selector should be modified like this. So dot books, so that it will find out any classes that has dot books. And same way, if your div is a ID with the ID of books, it should be then hash books. But let's just use a custom HTML element called books, so that it will be easier for us, and readability perspective, we will know what component that we are adding up in our HTML markup. So books will be our custom HTML template, custom HTML tag or element. Now another thing is, so once we add the selectors, now the second property we can add up here is the template. Let's have a h3 tag which will say books. Okay, so now this is all done. Okay, in the real world application, the templates is usually several lines of code, so preferably in a separate HTML file. So I'm going to show you how that's done later in the video. So far we have created a basic component in Angular. This is our first step. Okay, so now we need to move this step into a second step, which is by adding this component into our Angular module, app module. So let's go to the app module. In the app module, the first thing you will notice is the ng module decorator, which takes up an object and then few properties here. Okay, what it means is for components, you can declare it here, and for the imports, providers, and Bootstrap, we won't be focusing more on this. Only when we are going to work in services or directives, we'll be looking here. For now, to add up our component, which is a books component, we just simply type in, and the beauty of Visual Studio Code is it will auto import your books component straight away automatically in your app module TS. So if you look closely, the import statement doesn't have a .ts extension. That's because TypeScript doesn't like when you add an extension in your import statement. This will automatically reference your books component TS file. So we don't need to worry about giving the extension of your component every time when you're going to add it. Okay, so note that now that we have created and included, now we need to go ahead and use this selector somewhere to display it in our browser. So for that, we need to go to app component, which is our default main component, and add something called books. It's not coming up. Books, right? There you go. So in the main app component, you have called up a custom element called books, and that in turn executes the component here. So this one is getting displayed here. So let's open up our inspect and see what's really happening. So to summarize, books is our custom HTML element that will render our component. So when Angular sees this element, it will render the template of our books component. So when we see that in a web inspector, we have our h3 element with the books wrapped in it, and then in turn it is wrapped by our custom element called books, and that in turn is wrapped by a parent element called app root, which is over in the index.html file. So all our component and the app component are wrapped in the app root. So this is the main wrapper, and then it goes into the app component, and from the app component it goes to the books component. So this is how the Angular executes. It's like a tree. And now let's go one step further and create a component using Angular CLI. What we will do is we will shut this down. We don't need this anymore. Then we will close this Visual Studio, and then we will create a new project so that we will have a responsive navigation, which I have a pre-built code, so that we will just copy paste, and we will have a navigation as well as some books listing. Okay, so let's get started. To do that, first we'll create a new ng project. So ng new Angular component example, and we can define our style here. So if you want CSS, you can just leave this blank, and default will be your .css files. But no, I want a SCSS Sass file, which is a syntactically awesome CSS. We can leverage this type of CSS or Sass. You can use variables and define your theme for your app. It's more versatile compared to a normal CSS. So let's go ahead and create our, we are inside our Angular project, which is way wrong. What we'll do is copy this, come out of the directory, and then create our Angular component example. Okay. Alright, so now we have our Angular component example project created. So we will go into the Angular project and then let's do something here. Okay, we will open up a project in Visual Studio Code as a first step, and then we will do ng-serve to start our application. Right. Okay, and again, it's a new app, so obviously let's wait for the localhost to turn up. Yep. So okay, it's up and running. So now let's go ahead and get rid of everything here in the app component. Right, so we have a blank page now. Okay, there's another method in creating your component. Instead of going and doing it manually, which is not quite advisable. So in your VS Code, Control and tilde, you will have a terminal opened up. So in this terminal, you can leverage ng command line interface for Angular to create your component, which is fairly simple. It will create the components with. So okay, before going further, I'm going to have a navigation. Okay, so my idea is I will have, this is in HTML. Okay, so let me comment that out. I will have a main navigation for my application, and then list of books for my application. So one is main navigation and the other one is list of books. So we will be having two components. So let's go ahead and create that one. To create a component through CLI, we need to give ng, which is obviously our command line interface, and then space G for generate, and then C, which is short for component, and the name of a component. So for me, the name of my component is books, and the other one is ngjc main nav. So let's go ahead and give the command ngjc books. Now if you notice, let me zoom that in. Right, if you notice, our ngjc command created a SAS file, HTML and spec.ts, and the main thing is the component.ts. And one of the important thing is it also updated the app.module.ts. So if you open up the app module, you will notice that your component is registered inside the app module. So let's go ahead and open that and see that. See, your books component is added and then registered. Okay, so let's close this up and then let's go ahead and create another component, which is our main nav. Good. Okay, so when you're going to create a component using ng-CLI, what you will notice is it will create a folder, and then inside that folder you will have all these grouped together. So for the books, all the type of file is grouped together, like the TS, SAS and HTML. Same way for main nav. This is a really good approach because you will have better readability and better code structuring and organizing. The next thing is, let's go ahead. I already have some CSS left over, so I will be using that in this particular video. So I'll get rid of this. I'm opening a main style CSS, a global one. All right, I copy over. Don't worry, I'll be sharing this code in a GitHub so that you can have a look at it. So this CSS is a very simple. This CSS is a very simple responsive navigation to say, because you have a breakpoint for large devices. So I just made it for some other project and as an example, so why not, I can use it here. So the navigation that you're going to see doesn't have any relation to the main body of the application, because this is just an example. This is an example how to create a component using ng-CLI, and as well as using two or more components at the same time, right? So we defined our navigation styling in our style CSS, and then let's go to the main now. Open up the TypeScript file for our RAM. If you notice that you got an import statement, it's kind of a boilerplate now, so you don't have to bother much about this, and you have your template URL, which is the current directory, and then calling that template HTML. Right, so what we will do now is open up this template. I already have the templates here, so I don't need to start from scratch. It's a navigation with a branding and few navigation links. I believe that's a flexbox kind of navigation, I'm not sure. Okay, so that's done. Now in the TS, I'm about to do something here. If you notice, the selector is app main nav. The app-main nav is kind of redundant, so what we do is we don't need this. We just need main nav to be our selector. So I will go to the component and give it as main nav. See, we have our navigation showing up in our browser. That's a good thing. Yeah, it's a responsive nav. Okay, so yeah, that's a really good thing. So we got our nav. Now next thing is we need to get our books listings. Let's go to books the same way like how we worked on main nav. Let's go to the TypeScript file first and then remove this app hyphen, and we can have our custom HTML element called books. Right, so it's pretty much done. Now, okay, what am I missing here? Right, we need some dummy data. So for the books listings, what we'll do is I got some dummies here which says public of books, which we can use them in our books template. Okay, so the books template is books component HTML. We'll go over there, and then we need to write a directive called ng_for in order to show the listings of books. So first thing first, h2 list of books. Now let's open up. This is just a bare minimum styling. We don't need to bother much, but when we were working on a really complex project, we will be covering all the aspects of giving a proper styling and proper layout as well. So okay, so our li element will be looping with a list of books. So for that we need to loop it. ng_for equals let book of books. Okay, so the thing is, asterisk of ng_for is a directive in Angular which will do a for loop within the given variable. Okay, so books is the variable and it will fetch the object of book on every loop. The next thing is, let's display our title of h3. In Angular, the double curly braces is called interpolation. Okay, so book.title is our title of our book. We already got the titles rendered. The next thing is we need to show some description of our book. Everything is dummy here, so let's not worry about the kind of data it displays. All we worry is how we are going to display. Right, so this is pretty much it, what we are expecting. I'm happy with the result here. So you have two components. One is the main navigation component and the other one is the list of books component with book title and then the description. So we have some 20-25 odd books. This is how a basic building block of Angular. This is just a basic example. So this is how more complex applications are taken forward. So more complex and large application, there will be components inside a component and nesting with each other. So you will have this component will be again calling up some other component inside the books that has some other specificity inside the books component. Okay, so for example, you might have something called comments section in your books page. You can have something like book-comments, and this will in turn call the book comments component, which might reside inside this books component, right? So this is pretty much about the components that we created. So This is one of the basic building block of Angular project. In the next upcoming sessions, we'll be looking into templates, directives, and services. Thank you for watching this video. Please hit the like button and subscribe. If you have any suggestions or different approach, you can write down in the comments below. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.